Carved into stone and passed down through generations, nobility in 17th century Portugal was more than a title. It was a legacy. The Noronhas stood among the most influential families, their name echoing with tales of military glory, royal favor, and centuries of power. But despite their arrogance and dominance, one woman would bring them a quiet shame, not through scandal or crime, but simply by falling in love. Her name was Maria Teresa de Noronha, and her story would become one of the most unsettling whispers in the salons of Lisbon's aristocracy. Born into wealth and high expectations, Maria Teresa's early life unfolded in silence and structure. She was raised to be a dutiful daughter, a strategic bride, and a respectable matron. In the sprawling estate where servants moved like shadows and instructors drilled obedience into her mind, she was taught one lesson above all: duty must always eclipse desire. Her life was meant to serve alliances, inheritance, and legacy, not her heart. Yet, hidden beneath the rigid decorum of her world, a different spirit stirred. It all began with a glance in a cathedral courtyard. Some say he was the educated son of a fallen house. Others claim he was a wounded soldier, once loyal to the crown. Whoever he was, he didn't belong. He had no title, no wealth, and no favor. But none of that mattered to Maria Teresa. Behind ivy-covered balconies, in hurried notes sealed with trembling hands, their love quietly grew. In a world dictated by expectations, their union was the first thing that felt wild, fragile, and real. The affair remained hidden for a time. The estate's overseers looked the other way, and family members who suspected something kept quiet. But it only took one secret letter tucked inside a psalter, found by Anna, a younger cousin, to shatter the fragile peace. Whether out of jealousy or loyalty, Anna delivered the letter to Maria Teresa's uncle, the family patriarch, a widower feared for his silence and his unwavering sense of honor. There was no outburst, no rage, only a quiet judgment. As her uncle read the letter aloud, Maria Teresa stood silently. No plea would change his mind. She had dishonored them, stained their name, and jeopardized their standing. But there would be no public disgrace. The Noronhas would not tolerate tribunals, gossip, or duels. She would simply disappear. What happened to her lover remains a mystery. Some say he was shipped to the colonies, others claim he was quietly imprisoned or even executed and erased. But Maria Teresa's fate was still crueler. They ushered her into a carriage and took her westward, away from Lisbon's towers as the pale morning light crept across the sky. Her destination? A crumbling, forgotten monastery perched on a cliff above the raging Atlantic. It was no sanctuary. It was a sentence. No new sisters joined the convent, no visitors came, no messages were sent. They demanded no vows and expected no escape. They intended for her to disappear from both memory and history. When the iron gates slammed shut behind her, Maria Teresa was just 20 years old. She hadn't been buried in earth, but in silence. The monastery clung to the cliff, akin to a wound that resisted closure. There were no lush gardens, no warm chapels, and no peaceful choir. There was only salt-stained stone, an iron gate rusted with age, and a door that creaked with every gust from the sea. This place had swallowed others before. Now, it would become her world. Inside, the air was thick with dampness and time. Narrow hallways twisted through the stone, lit by lanterns barely clinging to crumbling walls. The silence was heavy, the scent of mildew inescapable. Only a handful of elderly women moved through the space, sweeping the floors and tending the chapel, never speaking, never questioning. Maria Teresa had joined them, another shadow drifting through the dark. The days were carefully organized, but Maria Teresa felt nothing. At dawn, she rose to tend to the household chores. Afternoons found her sitting in a stone cell overlooking the restless ocean. At night, the wind howled through the walls like an enraged spirit. Time lost all meaning. No festivals, no seasons, no public names spoken. The convent was less a place to live than a place to fade away. Yet Maria Teresa remained. She retreated inward, stripped of family, titles, and influence. What began as discipline became a test of character. Alone, she started writing, not for an audience, not to impress, but simply to keep her mind sane. She poured out her thoughts and hopes onto torn parchment, in the margins of tattered books, and faintly scratched onto the wooden beams of her prison. They were rooted in the past, dreams of a life once ablaze with love. Its shape slowly revealed. She dedicated her words to the man she loved, the man who had vanished. She wondered if he survived, if he searched for her, and if she filled his dreams as he filled hers. Even in seclusion, his memory was vivid. She could almost hear his voice, see his grin, and feel his hand, more real than the stone and sea around her. She clung to him while the world forgot. Years passed. Her hair grayed, and her hands grew dry and cracked. Yet she remained unbroken. The few women in the convent called her a Santa do Silencio, the saint of silence, not for piety, but for her unyielding strength. Each day she wore calm like armor, refusing to dwell on her past or surrender to despair. Long after, hidden within the chapel walls, lay the letters she left behind. Weathered and fragile, they spoke clearly. A strong-willed woman, emotionally resilient, a heart that never stopped hurting, and a mind that never ceased to shine. These were not complaints but testimonies of endurance. Maria Teresa de Noronha had once viewed love as a crime. Her final act of rebellion happened behind the monastery walls. No one spoke to her anymore, yet her voice grew louder than ever in its silence. No record marks the day she died. She passed away without a ceremony, parade, or noble burial. She quietly passed away, possibly during her sleep, her breath finally surrendering to the forces that had tormented her life for decades. In the convent's worn logbook, only her name appears, scrawled in fading ink with a date and a simple cross. There are no titles, no mention of her bloodline, and no mention of the love that cast her out. But history, no matter how deeply buried, has a way of resurfacing. Centuries later, during repairs of the cliffside convent, then abandoned and crumbling, workers discovered a hollow space behind the chapel wall. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth and nestled among loose stones, lay a bundle of letters, journals, and fragments of a woman's inner life long forgotten. The delicate but steady calligraphy endured, and though the ink had faded, the words still breathed. This was Maria Teresa's voice, later confirmed by scholars. There were no admissions or pleas, only memories, forgiveness, and the resilience of a soul facing hardship. Her lover remained a mystery. Redemption was never her goal. Instead, she addressed him, God, and perhaps the winds whipping outside her cage. She revealed herself as a philosopher of grief, an observer of isolation, a silent survivor, not only a fallen noblewoman. Her words inspired books, lectures, art, poetry, and music. Artists called her the exiled heart, a symbol of love's resilience even when faced with oblivion. Though her life was meant to be erased, the raw intensity of her lonely voice gave her a timeless legacy. Some still see Maria Teresa as a tragic figure, a woman whose greatest crime was loving despite her social status. But others see something far stronger in her story. She embodies the idea that the human spirit can find a voice even in the darkest, most forgotten corners of the earth. Even when a heart is sealed away, it continues to resonate throughout the ages. The convent remains, battered by time and weather, yet still standing. Visitors walk quietly through its halls, tracing the path she once took. Visitors leave flowers by the chapel wall. Some sit in the small stone cell, trying to imagine what it was like to live a life so utterly alone. Near the entrance, a simple plaque bears her name, Maria Teresa de Noronha, banned but not forgotten. Maybe that is the real legacy. Perhaps the true legacy lies not in her silent death, but in her rediscovery. A reminder that no voice can be silenced forever, and that love, once hidden, can always be revealed. If you found this story inspiring, please consider subscribing and clicking the bell to see more tales of human courage. Please let us know which historical figure you want to see next by leaving a comment below.